Max Verstappen is dominating Formula One like few drivers ever have. But what if the story behind his success isn't as clean as it looks? While fans celebrate his raw talent and record-breaking pace, there's uncomfortable truth lurking beneath the surface. It's something the media rarely says out loud, and most fans don't want to admit. Verstappen's rise wasn't just skill. It was a product of power, politics, and a system built entirely in his favor. Let's start with the early privilege no one talks about. Before Max Verstappen ever turned a wheel in Formula One, the foundation for his success was already being laid. Quietly, strategically, and with resources most young drivers could only dream of. It all began in the early 2000s, when Max was barely out of diapers and already absorbing the world of motorsport through his father, Jos Verstappen, a former F1 driver with deep ties in the racing world. Unlike most young drivers who climb the ladder with limited resources and minimal connections, Max had the racing equivalent of a golden ticket. From a very young age, Max had access to the best karting equipment, world-class coaching, and relentless exposure to European racing circuits. While other kids his age were fighting for sponsors just to afford new tires, Max was being flown across countries to compete in elite karting tournaments, often with mechanics and engineers at his side, and this wasn't by chance. Jos Verstappen made it his personal mission to mold Max into a racing machine, opening doors that are usually welded shut for even the most talented outsiders. By the time Max was 11, rumors were already swirling that he was being scouted by top-tier development programs. In 2014, at just 16 years old, he was fast-tracked into the Red Bull Junior team, bypassing the usual years of lower-tier racing. This wasn't just about talent, it was about access. The system worked in his favor from day one, and while fans love to celebrate the fairy tale of a young prodigy rising through grit and skill alone, Max's story had a different kind of boost. One powered by legacy, resources, and a network built long before he arrived on the scene. 2. The ruthless training that shaped a machine. While many young drivers dream of Formula One, Max Verstappen was being forged into a future world champion through a regime few would ever survive. Behind the scenes of his meteoric rise was a father determined not just to coach, but to control every detail of his development. Jos Verstappen didn't just guide Max, he engineered him. From the outside, it may have looked like nurturing support, but inside the Verstappen household, it was more like a military operation than a family hobby. From as early as 8 years old, Max was subjected to brutally long karting sessions, often running hundreds of laps until perfection was the only acceptable outcome. There were stories of Jos pulling Max out of races mid-competition when performance didn't meet expectations. Other times, Max would be forced to eat alone in the trailer after poor results, denied even the comfort of conversation. This wasn't occasional tough love, this was a constant, calculated pressure cooker designed to crush any signs of weakness. In interviews, Max has occasionally acknowledged the intensity of this upbringing, hinting at moments of resentment and exhaustion, but by the time he entered professional racing in the early 2010s, that foundation had hardened him into something different. Someone who didn't flinch under pressure, didn't complain, and never showed weakness in front of a microphone or a rival. He had been built to dominate, not just to compete. That relentless edge became his secret weapon. While other drivers dealt with pressure, Max thrived in it. And while fans marveled at his coolness under fire, few understood the cost it took to build that composure. Because for Max Verstappen, greatness wasn't just taught, it was enforced, with no margin for error. 3. A team built around one man. When Max Verstappen arrived at Red Bull Racing in 2016, it didn't take long for the team's entire focus to shift. While every Formula One team has a lead driver, Red Bull went beyond that. They built a racing empire around Max. From engineering to strategy, Verstappen became the gravitational center of everything. Teammates came and went, but none were allowed to challenge his status. Take Daniel Ricciardo, for example. The Australian driver was once considered a top-tier contender within the team, but by 2018, it was clear that the car development, media narrative, and internal energy were tilting toward Max. Ricciardo, sensing the shift, made the bold decision to leave the team entirely. Since then, no teammate has been given equal footing. Not Pierre Gasly, not Alex Albon, not even Sergio Perez. Red Bull's top brass have never been subtle about their loyalty. Christian Horner, the team principal, frequently refers to Max as a once-in-a-generation talent. While flattering, such statements also send a clear message to others in the paddock. This is Max's team. Strategy calls are almost always optimized for Verstappen, even if it means sacrificing the second driver's race. And this isn't just about favoritism, it's about results. Red Bull knows that backing Max completely brings championships. And for Max, having a team engineered around his driving style gives him an edge few can replicate. The dynamic is symbiotic, but it also creates an ecosystem where no one else can thrive. It's not a level playing field. It's Max's playground. And while other teams balance resources, Red Bull has made its choice. Max doesn't just drive for Red Bull, he is Red Bull. 4. The rules and the untouchable status. One of the most debated topics in recent Formula One history is the role of the FIA in Max Verstappen's rise, and whether the governing body has been too lenient, too forgiving, or even quietly supportive. While Max has never officially received special treatment, the optics of certain rulings, especially in high-stakes moments, have raised eyebrows across the paddock. The most glaring example came during the 2021 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. In one of the most controversial endings the sport has ever seen, race director Michael Masi made a rule-bending decision that allowed Verstappen to restart the race directly behind Lewis Hamilton. Within one lap, Max overtook him and won his first world championship. The decision was so divisive that Masi was later removed from his position, and yet the title stood. But that wasn't the only incident. Throughout the seasons, Verstappen has often walked the fine line of aggressive driving and occasionally crossed it. Whether it's forcing rivals off track or weaving under braking, Max's style is bold and uncompromising. Yet penalties have been rare or lenient. In contrast, other drivers have received harsher rulings for seemingly smaller infractions. This pattern has fueled speculation. Is the FIA protecting Max? Or is the sport simply unwilling to disrupt the momentum of its most marketable star? Formula One thrives on dominant figures, and Max brings ratings, headlines, and fan engagement. In a way, his dominance benefits the very institution that's supposed to keep the playing field fair. Whether intentional or not, the message is clear. Verstappen is not just winning, he's operating in a space where the usual rules sometimes bend, and that creates a layer of invincibility no rival can ignore. 5. The mental warfare and his cold persona. Max Verstappen doesn't need to play mind games. His presence is intimidating enough. In a sport where image and PR often mask true personality, Max stands out for his unapologetic approach. He doesn't care about media charm, doesn't sugarcoat his opinions, and never tries to be the fan favorite. This cold, calculated exterior is part of what makes him so formidable. Unlike drivers like Lewis Hamilton, who balance fierce competition with public charisma and global activism, Verstappen is all business. He rarely engages in public feuds, but when he speaks, it's with the kind of certainty that silences critics. His interviews are short, blunt, and often brutally honest. There's no emotional theatrics, no attempts at mass appeal, just pure, focused intensity. And that intensity seeps into his racing. On track, Max doesn't give an inch. He's not afraid to push limits, rattle rivals, or risk collisions. He thrives under pressure in ways that unsettle even seasoned champions. It's not just that he's fast, it's that he knows he's fast, and he doesn't feel the need to prove it to anyone but himself. This psychological armor has been key to his rise. While younger drivers often crack under the weight of expectations, Max seems immune. Critics call him arrogant. Others say he lacks emotion. But to Red Bull, and to those who understand the mind games of Formula One, his coldness is not a flaw, it's a weapon. He doesn't need to win fans, he just needs to win races, and in the high-stakes world of Formula One, that mindset might be the most dangerous advantage of all. 6. The perfect storm: timing, tech, and the grid gap. Every champion needs a bit of luck, but in Max Verstappen's case, it was more like the universe aligned. The 2022 season brought major regulation changes to the sport, with redesigned cars and a renewed focus on aerodynamics. Red Bull nailed the transition. Their car was light, powerful, and ruthlessly efficient on tire wear. Mercedes, long the dominant force, stumbled with porpoising issues. Ferrari, despite early promise, collapsed under strategic blunders. Suddenly, Verstappen wasn't just competing, he was cruising. The gap between Red Bull and the rest of the field grew wider with each race. And while fans celebrated Max's flawless drives, few acknowledged how perfectly the timing worked in his favor. It wasn't just his skill behind the wheel, it was the right car, the right rules, and a weakened field. The rise of Verstappen during this window wasn't accidental. Red Bull had planned for this moment. Their engineering team, led by the legendary Adrian Newey, designed a car tailor-made for Max's aggressive driving style. Straight line of speed, stable cornering, and excellent reliability, all of it played into Verstappen's hands. And because Max was already at his peak form, mentally and physically, the results were inevitable. He wasn't being challenged. Races turned into parades. The drama disappeared, but the dominance remained. For purists, this wasn't exciting. For Verstappen fans, it was validation. But beneath the celebrations, there was a truth few wanted to say out loud. Max Verstappen wasn't just winning because he was better. He was winning because everything else, cars, rivals, rules, lined up to give him the perfect storm. 7. The ugly truth. F1 rewards systems, not just skill. It's comforting to believe that Formula One is a meritocracy, that the fastest, smartest, and most dedicated drivers rise to the top, but Max Verstappen's story exposes a deeper truth. In F1, the system matters more than the story. From the junior ranks to championship glory, success is as much about politics, money, and timing as it is about raw talent. Max had the perfect cocktail from day one. Family legacy, elite access, and early investment from a top-tier team. But beyond that, he had a sport that was increasingly shaped by branding and business. F1 isn't just about racing anymore. It's about marketability, media narratives, and sustaining a global entertainment product. And Max, with his ice-cold focus and generational skill, became the poster child for a new era. The ugly truth? There are drivers on the grid just as talented who will never get a shot at a top car. There are champions in waiting who are stuck in midfield machinery, never given the chance to shine. But Max was in the right place at the right time with the right backing. And while he capitalized brilliantly, the pathway was never fair to begin with. Fans love the myth of the self-made driver. But Verstappen's journey was fast-tracked, protected, and padded in ways most can't relate to. That doesn't mean he isn't great. It just means his greatness didn't grow in a vacuum. It was cultivated, supported, and at times shielded by a system designed to elevate him. And the more you look at it, the harder it becomes to call it a fair fight. Conclusion: the legacy debate. Max Verstappen is rewriting Formula One history in real time. With every race won, every pole position claimed, and every record shattered, his legacy grows. But the debate surrounding that legacy is far from settled. Will he be remembered as the greatest natural talent of his generation, or as the driver who benefited most from a perfectly rigged system? There's no denying Max's brilliance behind the wheel. His racecraft, consistency, and mental fortitude are rare even among elite athletes. But the story of his rise is filled with privilege, protection, and perfectly timed advantages. That doesn't diminish his talent, but it does complicate the narrative. Because in Formula One, greatness is rarely just about speed, it's about survival, politics, and playing the game better than anyone else. Max played it perfectly, but he also had the board set up in his favor. Years from now, fans will look back on this era and marvel at the records. But the conversation won't stop there. They'll ask the uncomfortable questions. They'll remember the controversies. And they'll wonder if everything had been equal. If every driver had Max's access, his backing, and his team, would he still have come out on top? That's the part nobody wants to admit,